Question: Are there any valid reasons on why there are no steps of evolution taking place now, i.e., primates evolving into Homo sapiens, or even more ridiculous, canines evolving into whales?
I'm assuming that we were coming from the point of view of if evolution is real or if evolution did occur, then why aren't we evolving onwards and upwards? Because you'll find that there are a number of evolutionists that claim that we are continuing to evolve. I believe that David Attenborough was one of them who mentioned the concept that we are continuing to evolve as a species. Evolution is not a static thing, I think was the quote, which is hilarious considering the fossil record is relatively static in terms of kinds after its kind. But it is an important point. Number one, why don't we see evolution taking place now? As Richard Dawkins says,
it's just occurring so slow.
Yeah, it's been observed. It just hasn't been observed while it's happening, I think was the quote. And John can correct me on that. But also, you've got to ask the question: well, are there any valid reasons why there's no steps of evolution taking place now? Even if we can see the evidence that it is happening now, currently, again, beware of the argument of the present is the key to the past, right? Even if we did see any evidence of it happening now, that doesn't automatically mean that that's how it happened in the past. To do that, you would need to go to the fossil record, which is a history of past life. Now, is it a history of death or is it a history of life? That's the second question you need to ask. But even if you assume it's a history of life, all you can see is that creatures have reproduced after their kind or they've gone extinct, right? So neither of those two things are any help for evolution at all. John, Craig, Diane, comments?
Sure, I'll throw in a few comments as someone who added on to his geology degree work 3 years of genetics. And as I've said before, and I'll continue to say it, our professor was a world expert on the evolution of Drosophila melanogaster, otherwise known as the fruit fly. But when you asked him, how did evolution happen? He said, we do not know. When you asked him for evidence of it, he would simply point to flies losing their wings, flies going to red eyes. He had no evidence of anything changing into flies from non-flies or flies turning into things that weren't flies. And he would be one of the first to admit that. But one of the things that's gone on with myself and Diane since then is the realization that you are designed to not evolve, right? I'll repeat that. You are designed to not evolve. So when you look at the mechanisms in the human body, you have repair mechanisms which are unbelievable in their sophistication. To repair DNA, to patch up mutations, they are really a whole system of engineered design mechanism to keep you human, right? To keep a monkey, to keep a fruit fly, right? And they work brilliantly. And Diane can take up where I leave off. But the interesting thing is, there's not only a physical reason for not observing evolution, there's a biblical reason that you need to consider. You see, modern science, when you go back to its origins, began with the biblical philosophy. Read Francis Bacon, read some of the others on their biblical philosophy that God has been a God of law. He's built law and order into the creation, and he's commanded us to have dominion. Let's exercise it and find out what his laws are, right? That's the whole basis of modern scientific investigation, which is why Western Christianity is the source of science, not ancient Hinduism. Totally different and wrong philosophy out there. So what you'll find is when you look at your biblical philosophy, it says also in Genesis chapter 1 through to Romans chapter 1, God has written his nature, written his signature, stamped his authority loud, and he tells you what he's like. He has put his own nature on his creation, and he never changes. That's why we know homosexuality is wrong. He was opposed to it when he made Adam and Eve. He's still opposed to it. No apologies. That is a biblical position. He has built this into creation so that you find that the fossils, as well as the living things, are designed to reflect his nature. If we were meant to be man, we will stay man because Jesus Christ is the same. Jesus Christ, the creator, never changes. Whatever he says about something 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, he has not changed his mind one bit. And you and I need to get into line with that. Diane, tell them about some of our mechanisms which are there.
Yes, well, the more that we study in modern genetics, the more we've seen evidence that DNA is designed not to evolve. In your cells all the time, your DNA is being constantly surveyed for any mistakes or any damage to it. And there is this massive repair crew, which is hundreds of molecules, of really complicated molecules, that all have to come together, work in a particular sequence, and they will actually take out damaged bits and replace them with properly copied bits. That's why we actually have two strands in DNA. It's meant to be a backup system. And when your cells reproduce, not only is the DNA copied, but it is checked at that time. And if there are any copying mistakes, they are edited out and replaced with correct pieces. Now, that system does break down in the world that we live in now, because sometimes the repair processes get damaged. So it's like looking after any piece of machinery or a building or something. If you knock out the security system or the repair system, well, the damaged bits are just going to go on. And that's what happens with a lot of diseases these days, including cancer. And as we saw with that report we had about the bacteria, bacterial infections ultimately go back to a defect in one of the genes in the bacteria that starts off a whole process that results in disease in human beings. But ultimately, DNA, when it is functioning properly, is designed not to evolve. And that's what we see when we go out and observe the real world, and we observe things reproducing, whether they be bacteria, plants, animals, and people. Our observations are that things multiply after their kind. And so that's why there are no signs of evolution or no steps of evolution happening now, because living things are designed not to evolve. They are designed to multiply after their kind. And that's what we observe when we actually go out and look at the real world, no matter what we believe about what may have happened in the past. What we see now is after their kind. And we do see some change, but it's degenerative change. We don't see any new things evolving. We don't see anything changing from one kind into another. A bit of variation, yes, with the fruit flies that the geneticists love so much. Yes, you get change from flat wings to crinkly wings, or red eyes to different colored eyes. But even that bacterium that we talked about in our newsletter, the disease-causing bacteria is exactly the same species as the non-disease causing ones. And they actually studied a couple of other species as well that have the same problem. And again, same species, just something has gone wrong in the genetics. So that's what we see in the real world.
The short answer to that question, therefore, is no.
Yeah. Good summary, Craig.
Sorry, okay.
I was wondering how many people, if they really believed evolution, would have children, because you never know what you're going to get. Or how many plant breeders would be plant breeders, because they wouldn't know what they're going to get. But
well, that's right. Well, farmers make that very point.
It's a question that should be asked to an evolutionist, see what they come up with.
And agriculture is the longest running experiment in human history. It was the first job given to man, which was to tend the garden. It's been going on for, in the archaeological record, at least 5,500 years. And plants still produce the same plants that they were producing thousands of years ago. So they don't actually evolve at all.
And with a lot of work, we can make some slight changes within those kinds, but that's all we're accomplishing.